that the next generation, Gen Y, Gen Z, whatever, I don't know what comes after Z anyway, but is there any hope that they've learned something from this all, and that they are being perhaps more mindful, more thoughtful about these choices? Because I was almost convinced that they were, but then you talk about a typical kid on Facebook who lists their interests as Ugg boots, Juicy Couture, Hudson jeans, and, whatever, something I can't remember. But, so, have they learned anything, or does every generation have to, stumble through this on their own?
Well, yeah, I think it's such an interest. And by the way, when we did this research consortium with companies around the world, the thing that they spoke about most really, actually, if we analysed all the conversations, was the generations. I mean, I think there's a huge amount of interest at the moment in the generations, partly because there are more generations now working than there's ever been before. So you get these generational cohorts. And also because, when you think about it, as you speed up the world, one thing that happens is the experiences of those different generations gets more and more different. If you think 100 years back, you were just the same as your parents. There wasn't anything like, intergenerational conflict, because you were the same. So we talked a lot, and actually in a piece of research which I haven't talked about in the book, but I have written about very recently, another piece of research we did with the companies, we said to them, of all these forces, which are the ones that are worrying you the most? And the one that came out as number one was intergenerational cohesion. And what they meant by that is to say, we're worried that actually the generations are getting more and more different and want different things. And one of the arguments, and Rifkin makes it in his book, and others have made it the same, is that Gen Y, who are now sort of entering organisations, are more empathic. And the argument is they're more empathic because they're more connected. They know who made their shoes. They know, where their rubbish goes. They know how this stuff, oil comes out of the world. And at the same time, so the connectivity is actually building empathy. So there's an argument which I describe in the book. I don't think it's substantiated yet, but I think there's a lot of research right now, and I'm involved in some of that, which is looking at that suggests that the next generation, the Gen Y, are going to be particularly empathic about each other's needs and aspirations and, the way they want to live. And I think that, combined with connectivity, could create, and I don't even know the name of it, and Gary, you're such a marvellous wordsmith, you'll probably come up with a name, but and global consciousness sounds a bit weird really, but I do think that there will become forms which are, really assume, much more importance in the world, and they're not basically big companies, and they're not basically governments, they're something else. And I can begin to feel these being created, and I think they're going to happen very quickly. And I suspect that you may well get, millions of people around the world deciding that they want to live differently. Now, Gary, you remember when you and I were hippies all those years back. I mean, there weren't that many of us, and we weren't connected. We were just, like being hippies in our own time. But imagine, a group of people of the age that we were when we were hippies, but actually who could connect to each other about issues that are important. And by the way, make a living from it, in fact, as they go along. Then I think that this new emergent form, which we haven't got a name for yet, is actually one of the most interesting aspects of the future.
Well, I certainly think it suggests that, for the first time in centuries, we are going to have alternatives to traditional hierarchical, large institutions. So that has to be exciting. That, and you make the point in the book, we are at now a point of amazing institutional innovation as well, with all new forms of social cooperation emerging. And, for anybody starting out a career, there are a lot more alternatives. When we were teaching back on the MBA program all those years ago, most of our students, the assumption was, my choices are Goldman's or Procter & Gamble or Shell or Ford and whatever. And today, the amount of choices that young people have in terms of how you make a difference in the world and how you earn your crust are just extraordinary. And so opening up those possibilities, challenging our thinking. Thanks a lot for the book, Lynda. It's called The Shift, published by HarperCollins. And thanks for joining us here on The Mix to have this conversation.
Thank you so much, Gary. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.